Hello, assistants. May God bless you abundantly. Welcome to one more Strengthening Our Salvation. I'm sure that if you've been going to the church for the past couple of weeks, especially on Wednesday, you have heard your pastor or bishop talk a lot about sanctifying the name of the Lord Jesus. And you've heard explanations as to what that means. Now, one of the terms you might have heard is that character, because sanctification, sanctifying the name of God, the name of the Lord Jesus, has to do with our character and integrity. And you've probably heard the term over the past couple of weeks that character is what we do when we are alone. And why? Because when we are surrounded by people, we wouldn't do anything that compromises how people see us. Right? So we try, when we are surrounded by people, to be the best version of ourselves. And so most times when someone falls into sin or does something they shouldn't do, it's either when they are completely alone or when they are surrounded by strangers and no one knows who they are. Right? So with this understanding, let's look at what the Lord Jesus did when he was alone. What does the Bible tell us that he did while he was alone? Well, we know that when he was alone, he was doing one of two things that the Bible tells us about. He was doing one of two things. First of all, he was either resting, right? Sleeping, and we have to do the same. We have to rest, we have to sleep. So he was either sleeping, resting, or he was praying. And that says a lot about who he was as the Son of God. The moments that he was alone, he was spending time with the Father, asking the Father for strength. A perfect example of this is when he was alone praying before he was arrested. He took the disciples with him to a certain point, and past that point, he went to pray by himself. And that shows us who he was, the character that he had. Why do we say that character has to do with what we do when we are alone? Because when we are alone is when the reality of who we truly are comes out, because we've got no one to judge us, we've got no one to tell us you're doing something wrong, hey, do something different. We are free to do whatever we want without judgment. And so, when we talk about sanctifying the name of the Lord Jesus, and we understand that sanctifying his name means we carry his name and we give a good account of ourselves in sanctifying his name through our conduct, that is not true only when we are in front of people, but especially when we are alone. And if you have this understanding, then you make a pact, you make a vow to sanctify him not only when you are surrounded by people, but when you are alone. And the things we do alone, they have a long-standing consequence in our lives. I'll give you an example. If you've ever watched the Olympic Games, let's talk about a very famous Olympian, right? Usain Bolt was, before he retired, the fastest man on earth, and many of his records, if not all, haven't been broken yet. And what you saw of Usain Bolt is what he did when your TV was on, right? A race by Usain Bolt lasted 6 seconds, 7 seconds, I don't know, a few seconds. What many people don't understand is that those 6 seconds were the result of years of what he did when the cameras were not on him. So who was Usain Bolt? Usain Bolt was the fastest man on earth. Why? Because of what he did when he was alone. He wanted to give a good account of himself as an athlete and the country that he represented. So who are you as an assistant? You may look at another assistant and say, I noticed that there's an assistant in my church who always has a word of faith to give us. He's someone that we can see God really working through that person. Why? Because of what that person does when they are alone. They are seeking God. They are seeking direction from God. They are feeding themselves with the words of God. And that is how the name of God is sanctified. When you appear in front of people, in front of your friends, in front of your family, showing, either a good account of yourself or someone who maybe, there are people who supposedly serve the Lord Jesus, that when they are in a circle of friends, they are as worldly and as fleshly as everyone in that circle. And you know why? Because that's who they are. Because if we want to be different, we have to invest in the time that we spend alone with our God. So remember this. We are the result of what we do when we are alone. If when you are alone, you spend time, and that doesn't have to be all the time you are alone, but you invest time in talking to God, in asking Him to strengthen you when you are tempted. Instead of you falling when you are tempted, you go on your knees and you say, my God, strengthen me, don't let me fall. If you do this, then when problems come, when you have to represent the Lord Jesus in front of a circle of friends or enemies, you will give a good account of yourself and the God you serve, and you will sanctify His name. I hope that this message today has been useful. If it has been, then please share it with as many people as you can, and we will see you next Friday, next week, for one more Strengthening Our Salvation. God bless you. Bye-bye.